Have you ever wondered how a single piece of paper could unravel decades of carefully guarded traditions and expose the fragile humanity behind a crown? Could one letter, hidden away for years, hold the power to shake the foundations of a monarchy that has survived wars, scandals, and endless public scrutiny? And perhaps most striking of all, how does a family that has built its image on composure and duty react when the walls of secrecy begin to crumble before their very eyes? For years, the royal family stood as a symbol of strength, continuity, and unshakable composure. To the outside world, they projected unity, a sense that nothing could rattle their perfectly polished exterior. But behind the gilded walls, a storm was gathering, silent but fierce. Princess Anne, the family's most steadfast pillar, the woman known for her resilience and unwavering discipline, found herself at the center of an emotional upheaval that few could have ever predicted. It began when a confidential document landed in her hands, revealing private struggles that King Charles had carefully hidden. For the first time in decades, Anne, the famously composed princess, was seen in tears, her reaction rippling through the palace corridors like a sudden earthquake. This rare display of emotion ignited whispers, speculation, and even fear. Palace staff, long accustomed to the silent codes of discretion, began trading hushed accounts of what they had seen and heard. The timing could not have been worse. A major royal event loomed on the horizon, yet the family was unraveling internally. For the monarchy, appearances are everything, but appearances were suddenly at risk. The shock on Anne's face, the distress in her voice, told a story far greater than one woman's grief. It was a sign that something deeply troubling was unfolding at the very heart of the crown. For months, Charles had been retreating from those around him. His once confident demeanor had grown clouded by uncertainty, replaced by a kind of quiet evasiveness that even his closest confidants struggled to interpret. Inside Buckingham Palace, the silence was thick, punctuated only by late-night pacing and secretive movements that raised more questions than answers. Some speculated about political maneuvers, others about health concerns, and a few dared to suggest personal despair. To Anne, the change in her brother was impossible to ignore. She tried to confront him, to draw out even the smallest thread of truth, but was met only with vague reassurances, words designed to soothe without satisfying. The growing distance wasn't helped by Queen Camilla's role as gatekeeper. She stood firmly between Charles and the rest of the family, shielding him from probing questions and controlling the flow of information. Her approach, whether protective or manipulative, deepened the cracks already spreading through the royal household. Anne and Camilla, whose relationship had always been delicate, now found themselves at odds more than ever. Camilla's silence, her insistence on secrecy, clashed with Anne's instinct for clarity and directness, creating a division that bled into the staff itself. In whispered corners, rumors circulated about Charles's health, about emotional strain, about decisions being made in the shadows without consultation. The turning point came with the discovery of a hidden letter tucked away in the royal archives, written by Charles himself. Its contents were a mix of personal confession and strategic revelation, sleepless nights filled with despair, the suffocating weight of expectations, and, most shocking of all, a secret succession plan that bypassed traditional protocols, even excluding Anne. For a woman whose life had been defined by loyalty and duty, this felt like betrayal. Her tears, her anguish, were not only about her brother's suffering but also about the secrets that threatened to destabilize the monarchy she had fought so hard to uphold. The confrontation that followed was explosive, and demanded answers, her voice filled with the kind of raw emotion that had rarely been seen in public or private. She accused Charles of betrayal, of secrecy, of choosing to hide behind walls instead of trusting those closest to him. Charles, visibly shaken, tried to explain that his silence had been born of protection. Protection for the family, protection for the institution, protection for a public image that could not afford another crack. Camilla's attempt to step in only worsened the tension, her presence underscoring the deep divide that had formed within the palace. In that heated exchange, the truth finally came to light. Charles admitted that his health was deteriorating and that his strength, both physical and emotional, was failing. The pressure of maintaining the monarchy's perfect facade had left him exhausted, isolated, and increasingly fearful of public exposure. He confessed to secret plans for succession, steps he had taken alone to shape the future of the crown. For Anne, the revelation was both heartbreaking and infuriating. She saw the vulnerable man behind the crown, her brother struggling under unbearable weight, but she also saw the danger of secrecy that excluded family and sowed mistrust. This moment shifted their dynamic. Anger gave way to compassion, though not without lingering bitterness. and realized that Charles's actions, however misguided, stemmed from desperation. But the fracture with Camilla deepened further. Her role as information gatekeeper was no longer just controversial, it was divisive, alienating and splitting palace staff into rival camps. Loyalty was tested. Trust was eroded. And through it all, the public remained unaware of the storm that brewed behind the curtains of Buckingham Palace. The strain could not remain hidden forever. At a public event, what was meant to be a routine appearance turned into a subtle but undeniable revelation. Observers noticed Charles's trembling hand, the distant look in his eyes, and Anne's uncharacteristic display of tears. The world quickly caught on, speculation spreading like wildfire. Was the king unwell? Was the royal family breaking apart? Why was Anne, so rarely vulnerable in public, suddenly unable to hide her emotions? The media wasted no time amplifying the story, contrasting Anne's honesty and humanity with Camilla's cold, stony silence. Public support began to rally behind Anne, while criticism toward Camilla grew louder. The palace had no choice but to act. An emergency council was convened, pulling together senior royals, trusted advisors, and those with the power to influence the monarchy's direction. The discussions were tense, revolving around the central conflict of secrecy versus transparency. Advisors urged caution, fearing that revealing too much would trigger panic and undermine the monarchy's strength. Anne, however, stood firm in her opposition, arguing that secrecy had already created the crisis they faced. Camilla defended her strategy, insisting that protecting Charles's dignity and the monarchy's image was paramount. In the midst of heated arguments, Charles himself spoke, breaking through the noise with an emotional plea for unity. He admitted his mistakes, acknowledged the pain his silence had caused, and expressed a desperate hope that his legacy would not be defined by division. His words softened the room, if only momentarily, reminding everyone that beneath the politics and power plays was a man burdened by impossible expectations. It was Prince William's intervention, however, that shifted the council toward resolution. Balancing Anne's call for openness with Camilla's push for caution, he proposed a path that combined transparency with strategic control, a modernization of the monarchy's approach that sought to preserve dignity while building trust. This compromise led to a historic decree, a turning point that redefined governance and recalibrated the balance of power within the royal family. For Anne, the outcome was bittersweet. She had fought for openness and honesty, and while she did not achieve it fully, she recognized the progress made. Privately, she vowed to protect her brother's legacy while preparing herself for the battles ahead. Her transformation was striking. No longer the silent supporter in the background, she had become an active force, ready to safeguard the monarchy's future even as factionalism threatened to tear it apart. In moments of solitude, Anne reflected on her childhood with Charles, on the burdens he had carried from such a young age, on the weight of expectations that had pressed down on him relentlessly. Her sorrows slowly hardened into resolve. She knew the divisions within the palace would not disappear. Camilla's influence would continue to clash with her own ideals, and staff loyalties would remain fractured. But she also knew that her role had changed forever. She was no longer just a dutiful sister. She was the emotional anchor of the monarchy, the figure the public now looked to for honesty and strength. When Anne finally addressed the public, her words were carefully chosen, striking a balance between candor and reassurance. She spoke with sincerity, acknowledging the hardships but affirming the family's commitment to duty and continuity. The world listened, touched by her honesty and reassured by her strength. Yet beneath her calm delivery, fractures remained, hidden but unhealed, and the future of the monarchy hung delicately in the balance. The unfolding events signaled more than just a family crisis. They represented a profound challenge to centuries-old traditions. The monarchy was being forced to confront a modern world where transparency mattered more than secrecy, where unity was no longer assumed but had to be earned, where the weight of human vulnerability could no longer be disguised behind crowns and ceremonies. Princess Anne, once the quiet and dutiful figure in the background, had stepped into a role she never asked for but could not avoid. She had become the voice of honesty, the face of resilience, and the living reminder that even in a palace built on protocol, human emotion cannot be hidden forever. The monarchy now stands at a crossroads, its future shaped by these revelations. The world is watching closely, waiting to see whether this family, this institution, will find strength in transparency or stumble further under the weight of secrecy. One thing is certain: the crown, though gilded, is heavy, and those who bear it remain as human as the rest of us. If you found this story captivating, don't forget to give this video a like and hit the subscribe button. There are many more royal revelations and untold stories waiting to be uncovered, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.